I certainly found yesterday very informative and inspiring, and I hope all of you did as well. And I hope you had a good night's sleep, because we're starting another day of presentations that are especially important, because today we're going to focus almost entirely on solutions, and I'm going to meet with our legislators so that we can send the messages that we need to send to help advance solutions to the climate crisis. We learned a great deal yesterday. We got updated on many fronts, but what we need to communicate is relatively limited compared to everything that we know. And so we will be focusing this morning on solutions, and then specifically on communicating a message and an ask to Congress. So thank you for being here. And before we start, we have a visitor from the American Lung Association who is going to say a few words. Paul Billings is National Senior Vice President for Advocacy. He oversees the Lung Association's asthma, lung cancer, COPD, healthy air, and tobacco control advocacy programs. During his tenure of more than 25 years, he's led federal advocacy campaigns that resulted in stricter regulations on tobacco products, growth in research funding, improved patient access to preventive services, and cleanup of air pollution from motor vehicles and power plants. So welcome, Paul Billings.
Thank you, Mona, and good morning. So it's fitting that today we're in a room with public health advocates steps away from the Antonin Scalia School of Law. It's no joke. In 2001, Antonin Scalia wrote a unanimous Supreme Court decision in the American Trucking v. Whitman case. 9-0, Scalia, he read that the Clean Air Act that said that air pollution health standards must be based solely on health. It was the clear reading of the statute. All 8 of his colleagues concurred, and that landmark case maintained that the Clean Air Act is a public health law. So while I may disagree with Justice Scalia and many of his decisions, on that one, I strongly agree and will be forever grateful for his jurisprudence. So I want to thank all of you for being here today. And I know many of you traveled far and took time away from family and work to join us. We live in interesting times. And Washington is the most interesting place in these interesting times. If you watch cable news, open up Twitter, or even read a dead tree newspaper, you probably have seen headlines about how Washington is broken, gridlock, or something called the partisan divide. And I agree, Washington is incredibly challenging, and working on climate change is perhaps the most challenging issue. But as someone who spent the better part of 16 months working to defend health care, I can assure you that there are many, many challenging issues. But that's why your presence here today is so important. If everyone agreed with you, if everyone agreed with me, I wouldn't have a job. You would need to be here. But we need to engage in this conversation. We need to share this education process. We need you to share your perspective, your expertise, and your experience with the people you're going to meet with today. It is important for you to share your knowledge of science. It is important for you to share your personal stories. It's important for you to drive forward a narrative about why you're here and why it's so important that your members of Congress will listen to you. But it's also really important to listen and try to understand the perspective of the member of Congress or the staff that you're meeting with. Listen for areas of common ground. Listen for opportunities. Listen for shared experience. We can build on that because we are in this for the long haul. And I know that's challenging because everybody in Washington is impatient. This is a town with a very, very short attention span. And everybody desires to have a quick win or come to a quick solution. It is a town that's dominated by short-term thinking. 2 years is a lifetime, or at least a term of a member of Congress. So as advocates, we need to strike a balance between the urgency of the issue we're here to talk about and the challenge that is climate change and the dire consequences of the failure to act, with a patience to know that this is a long haul, that this is a process of education and building support over the long haul. Taking time step by step. The process is slow and cumbersome and clunky, but there are good reasons for that. It's also why we are able to defend landmark public health statutes like the Clean Air Act. And so one thing that's really important to understand is the Clean Air Act is the cornerstone of all that we're trying to accomplish. It took a long time to pass the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments. It started in 1981 with efforts to weaken and roll back that law, and 9 long years of slog before that bill became law. The 70 Act and the 77 Act happened much faster, but understand that we got to trust the process and understand the importance of this statute, because it is an incredibly powerful law. It provides all the tools that we need to make tremendous progress. There may be more efficient ways to make progress through legislative solutions, but there also is great risk with some of those legislative approaches. So as you're having your conversations, respect that law, celebrate that law, cherish that law. 160,000 premature deaths were avoided in 2010 alone because of that statute. More than 230,000 premature deaths will be avoided in 2020 alone, according to an analysis the EPA did in 2011. And if they were to do that same analysis today, it would be much higher because more rules have been put in place, more cleanup has occurred. So think of the power of a law that can save literally hundreds of thousands of lives each year. And also think about the power of a well-written statute that even Antonin Scalia can get 8 of his colleagues to concur with an opinion that it is a public health law. So I thank you all for being here. You're going to have a great day. The sun's going to come out. It's going to be a little warmer than it is now. Hopefully it won't rain. But you'll be inside and you'll be sharing a very powerful message. So I appreciate you all taking the time to be here. I'll be joining some of you for your visits this afternoon. Go forth and share the truth, but also listen to what they have to say so we can then continue to find that common ground. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for rejoining us for our second and final and very important day and time together. It is my pleasure to bring our focus back to climate solutions, because fundamentally that is why we are here. We understand that we have a major challenge that we are facing and that we as health professionals have an important opportunity at hand. So we're going to bring to this morning, I'm going to have a panel. Actually, if all 3 panelists could come forward, please, that would be lovely. Going to have a panel called Climate Change Solutions, Pricing Carbon, Sequestering Carbon Through Biodiversity, and Boosting Energy Efficiency. Fundamentally, this is about prevention. So the next 3 speakers are going to each share with us an important perspective on prevention. As health professionals, we understand the importance of prevention, and when we go to the Hill this afternoon and in all subsequent engagements that you all create the opportunity to have to explain to members of the public, to your patients, to members of your community, and to your elected representatives, fundamentally you've got to press the importance of preventing the worst of climate change. We can't prevent it all because it is already upon us, but we can prevent it from getting substantially worse. So our 3 speakers today are each going to share an important perspective on that opportunity. I think I'll just go ahead and introduce them all briefly right now, and then we'll roll right through and keep at least 10 or 15 minutes at the end so that you can engage with them and ask whatever questions you have or make whatever suggestions you would like to make. Our first speaker will be Peter Joseph, who is with Citizens Climate Lobby. Peter is a retired emergency room physician from my home county of Marin County, California. He likes to point out that the climate opinion maps that have been developed from our national public opinion polling put he and his neighbors in Marin County as perhaps the most climate-forward county in America. So we're going to have some opinions, some insights from Peter about that. Our second speaker will be Cassandra Cubes from the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, an incredibly important organization located here in Washington. Cassandra is head of their Energy and Environment Program. Obviously, we know that all Americans are against waste, so Cassandra will share important perspectives about how we can reduce energy waste as an important set of climate solutions. And then finally and lastly, Philip Bogdanoff from Biodiversity for a Living Planet. He heads their Washington office. His fundamental point is an incredibly important point in that the point is we can help nature help us if we just think smartly about how to do that. So, Peter, I turn the floor to you.
Thanks, Ed. It's great to see you again. Good morning, everybody. Peter Joseph here with Citizens Climate Lobby. I have 10 minutes to convince you all to A, join Citizens Climate Lobby, and B, for this organization to urge the respective societies that are members to start educating the physician members that they have in solutions. And the solution that I think all economists and many people agree upon is we need to price carbon. The real debate is how to price carbon, what to do with all those tax revenues, etc. That's the debate we need to be having. And when I think of what is our role as physicians, you know, as an ER doc, the motto is ready, fire, aim. We are really in a code blue situation here with our planet. We are out of time, and we need to act swiftly with real solutions. I tried this solution, civil disobedience, got arrested at the White House in 2011, realized that this is symbolic. It felt good, and it brought the issue to the public fore, but it really didn't stop this pipeline immediately. It finally got stopped, and now it's being built. So, you know, symbolic action is great, but we need the real action. And right after this event, I found Citizens Climate Lobby, and I instantaneously realized that this is not symbolic. This is dealing with the real problem, and the problem is money. Money makes the world go round. Follow the money. We all understand money in our respective professions. We can understand the money as it applies to the free emission of carbon into the atmosphere. Just a little science. It's like a mental status exam. Where are we? Who are we? Do you know your name? Where are you? Who's the president? Sorry. But right now, we're in a period where the Earth is cool, but it hasn't always been that way. And we are reversing the planetary history, driving the temperature back up to when the dinosaurs roamed, when all that carbon fuel was created in the first place. So it's kind of, Zen, I guess. We're creating a cycle that's pushing the Earth back millions and millions of years to when it was hot, which is, you know, okay. I just don't think civilization's going to survive it. And that's what I'm really here to say is I like our civilizations. I like to be able to get a CAT scan when you need it. But the Earth will be fine. It's been through mass extinctions before. It'll be back. We also have the technology to understand that thin rim of blue there, the atmosphere. We know what's in it. We know what we're doing to it. And the reason it's where it is at is because we've built our civilization on cheap fossil fuels. Who wouldn't? It would have been criminally negligent not to mine coal, oil, and gas to build our civilization to the point where we are now. But this is the curve of carbon emissions. It's gone up exponentially. And if you follow that red line to the top, where it needs to bend and start coming down just to have a 50-50 chance of survival, that means we need to urgently put the brakes on. And the brakes involve money. We have ended a stable geologic era, the Holocene, in which civilization developed. And now they have a new name for the era that we're now living in, the Anthropocene. And that's because our heat-trapping gases are causing the Earth to retain this much energy every day. 400,000 Hiroshima-sized atomic bombs of energy is unable to escape every day because of the heat-trapping gases. And we know that the sixth great extinction is underway for a lot of reasons. But climate change exacerbates all of them. And so the question really becomes for us healthcare providers is whether our civilization even is sustainable. I mean, imagine, we're so smart, and yet we've created a situation where our continued survival as an organized civilization is in question. And so, the question for us all is, what's our responsibility as doctors who have spent our lives healing and relieving suffering and exploration and research into the next great advances, and we run the risk of civilizations collapsing. We're at a point, a juncture, where we have to choose. That blue arrow points to now, where the paths diverge. The red line is the red line to hell, business as usual. That's going to warm the planet. It's going to drive CO2 up beyond 1,000 parts per million. It's now a little over 400. The green line is possible survival. And make no mistake, it's going to be rough. We've set in motion events that will continue for probably hundreds of years before they get better. So in order not to overpromise, we have to realize that what we're doing today and urgently is for the benefit of people that we will never live to see and societies that we will never get to live in. But it's in our hands now to prevent the worst case scenarios which will unfold generations from now. So we have to choose between fossil fuels and survival. It's really that simple. And there's one solution that we can't win without fixing the economy. There's one solution that we haven't talked about here yet, yesterday. We really didn't talk about carbon pricing. What we need is a carbon price, and a carbon price that works. And what the debate has to be amongst us physicians and our respective societies is, what kind of carbon price? What is the most efficient, equitable way to have a carbon price, one that works? Well, take it from a rocket scientist.
We actually did the calculations to say, what would it take to transition the whole world to sustainable energy? What kind of throughput would you actually need? And you need 100 gigafactories.
So 100 of these?
100 of these, yes.
That would make the United States...
No, the whole world.
The whole world?
The whole world. All energy.
That's it?
Yeah.
That sounds...
It's manageable.
That sounds manageable.
Yeah. The gigafactory, when it's complete, it'll have the largest footprint of any building in the world. Counting multiple levels, it could be as much as 15 million square feet. So Tesla can't build 100 gigafactories. The thing that's really going to make a difference is if companies that are much bigger than Tesla do the same thing. If the big industrial companies in China and the US and Europe, the big car companies, if they also do this, then collectively we can accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. And if government sets the rules to favor sustainable energy, we can get there really quickly. But it's really fundamental. Unless there's a price put on carbon,
we're never going to be able to make the transition that we need to in time, correct?
Yeah. And the only way to do that is basically with a carbon tax.
So I'd like to introduce Citizens Climate Lobby to you. You heard a little bit about it yesterday. This is a volunteer organization, grassroots, nonpartisan, strictly nonpartisan, spanning the entire country with chapters in almost every congressional district. We're organized that way. And what we're focused on is, first of all, nurturing personal political power. We train you, our members, on how to communicate with members of Congress, what the issues are, what the program is, the science, the economics. There's daily briefings. It's really incredible. And I got to say that since 2011, when I was a speaker for the Climate Reality program, giving the Al Gore "The Sky Really Is Falling" lecture, and coming up short in the solutions domain, since then I now can present real solutions that have the same power as the problem. They're matched. There's no cognitive dissonance. You don't fight global warming by putting in LEDs. That's part of the solution, but that's not all of it. What we recommend is a nonpartisan, fully refunded, the government doesn't keep the money, revenue neutral, the government doesn't keep the money, carbon fee, because if the government doesn't keep the money, it's not really a tax. It's a carbon fee. There's a cash dividend that goes to everyone with a Social Security number, and a border carbon duty. This is very important. The border carbon duty is the one and only mechanism on the face of the earth at this point in time that can engage the entire world economy. The UN can't do it. The World Trade Organization doesn't do it. No one country can do it. But the world economy is a gear set, and this will tweak those gears, and it's legal. Carbon fee and dividend is very appealing because it's conservative, because the government doesn't keep the money. There's no increase in revenues, no new bureaucracies. It's also progressive because everybody gets a check. So very low-income people get money. It solves part of the inequality problem. It's highly specific. It's highly specific. When I marched in New York in 2014 with 400,000 people, the demands, the signs were all over the place, you know, and it's not enough for legislators to hear from people, do something. They want to know, what is this what do you want us to do? So it's specific. It can be rapidly installed. It's fair. It doesn't single out any one industry. It's engaging. People can understand it, unlike more complicated schemes like cap and trade. As I mentioned, it's international. It can be internationally scaled. It's understandable. It supports markets. In fact, it's market-based for, you know, people who like capitalism. This is the way to fix the gigantic market failure of capitalism. And of course, it's beneficial to national security. The modeling shows much greater and more rapid emission reductions than any other plan, including the Clean Power Plan. So in closing, let me repeat what we heard several times yesterday in the Lancet. Strong and sustained carbon pricing being the most powerful tool. This is strong and sustained. Strong and sustained also means it has to be politically viable. Try taking away Social Security or the Alaska Permanent Fund. It's a non-starter politically. So the political durability of this proposal is very important, because if you're going to lend money to industry to retool, you want to know that the next administration isn't going to cancel this program like happened in Australia, for example. So the durability is a very important tool that economists have trouble modeling too. This organization has said that in order to accelerate decarbonization, we need effective carbon pricing. So the question becomes, finally, what is organized medicine's role? Here's my pitch. I think the medical societies should take it upon themselves at their top levels to discuss this problem, discuss this issue, and discuss this solution, and come to a decision that they are going to inform their physician or nurse members, whatever the health providers are, that they are going to start informing them of the problem and this aspect of the solution. Doctors can understand this. I can understand. I'm just an ER doc, but I can understand this. It's not that hard. And it is, ultimately, it's going to be the price of civilization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Cassandra, please.
right, good morning, everyone. My name is Cassandra Cubes. I'm with the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, also known as AC TripleE. It's a very long acronym in a town of acronyms, so we try and shorten it as much as possible. I'm really excited to be able to talk with you all today. It's not often that AC TripleE is invited to a conference full of healthcare professionals, and it's actually something that our organization is looking to expand on, and we've actually created a health and environment program early last year to be able to focus on the health and environmental benefits of energy efficiency. So this is a relatively newer space for us, but what isn't new for us is our focus on all things energy efficiency. And what I hope to communicate to you today is that energy efficiency can indeed be a tool to fight climate change. I would agree that LEDs can't do it alone, but we are definitely going to be talking about more than LEDs today. So hopefully you can be armed with some information as most of you are going to talk with members of Congress later this afternoon. You can understand what energy efficiency is, what's happening across the country today, and what more can be done. So first, a little bit more about AC TripleE. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization founded in 1980, so we've been around for a little while. And our primary role is to do research. We research all things energy efficiency, policies, programs, technologies, investments, and our focus is at all different levels of government, federal, state, and local throughout the U.S. And in recent years, we've expanded our work into international energy efficiency policies. A lot of our work revolves around doing things like scorecards. I'll show you at the end of this deck our state energy efficiency scorecard, but many organizations know us for that because what we do is we track progress at all different levels of government, state and local, as well as more recently our utility scorecard and our international energy efficiency scorecard. So it's a way of understanding kind of where an entity or a government is at in relation to its fellow peers. And I mentioned our health and environment program. I'm a member of that team. Also, J.R. Denson is here today. He started with AC TripleE last year. He comes to us with a public health background. So we've been able to use his skills and really broaden our work in the health and environment space. So first, I want to get everyone on the same page with what we're talking about when we talk about energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is achieved when outdated practices and technologies are replaced with new, less wasteful approaches. So this can certainly include things like swapping out your incandescent bulbs for an LED bulb, but it can also include things like increasing the insulation in your buildings, so tightening up your building envelope so you're not having conditioned air escaping from the building. It can also include things like swapping out appliances for more efficient ones that reduce energy waste. And energy efficiency happens in all sectors of the economy, and that's something that we at AC TripleE focus on, our research. The electric sector, the agricultural sector, industrial, commercial, and residential. So this really, we're not just talking about homes or offices, we're talking about all different types of buildings and industries. One of the key points I really want to get across, if we get across nothing else, is that energy efficiency can really improve public health. And it does that in a couple ways, but one of the ways I'm going to focus on today is how it can help to improve the ambient air that we all breathe. Energy efficiency, by requiring less energy, it therefore requires less energy to be burned at the power plant, which means that those harmful emissions that come from power plants are reduced. So by reducing those harmful emissions, you're then improving the air that we all breathe and improving people's health. And that's, I think, stated in the last bullet point there, but I've been talking a lot about power plants, but I also want to point out that the transportation sector is another area of focus for AC TripleE and another huge area of focus for energy efficiency, and certainly something that's been in the news recently with some comments from EPA. So that is definitely something to take into account. So how does energy efficiency improve public health? Well, it helps to reduce the pollutants that contribute to 4 of the leading causes of death in the U.S., including cancer, chronic lower respiratory illness diseases, heart disease, and stroke. I know there's been other discussions about how particular pollutants impact public health, so we don't need to go into a lot of detail here about that, but energy efficiency can help to reduce pollutants such as particulate matter, sulfur dioxides, nitrogen oxides, certainly CO2, but a particulate matter is something that can really contribute a lot of these health gains and the reduction in that. So something I want to point out as well is a report that we released a couple of months ago, earlier this year, called Saving Energy, Saving Lives. And what we did with that report is we looked at, okay, well, let's quantify the environmental and health benefits of energy efficiency. What do we mean when we say that energy efficiency improves health? So what we did was we used a couple of widely available EPA tools, and we modeled what a reduction in 15% of electricity use across the country would mean in terms of avoided health harms. And the results were pretty significant. And this is on an annual basis. A reduction in 15% of electricity use across the country could result in more than 6 lives saved every day, prevent nearly 30,000 asthma episodes every year, and save Americans up to $20 billion in avoided health harms annually. And I want to stress that this is annually because energy efficiency, when you install a new light bulb, when you swap out a refrigerator for a new one, you're not just keeping those in place for 1 year. You're keeping them in place for sometimes up to 10 or more years. And those savings that you get from energy efficiency in terms of reduced pollution coming from power plants, those persist over the lifetime of that energy efficiency measure. So it's important to understand that energy efficiency is not just a one-time thing, that you can continue to get benefits the longer that those technologies are in place. And something else I want to point out about this report is that it ranks the avoided health harms by state and city. And you can, the link is here, and I'm happy to send it to anyone interested. But we also rank them on a per capita basis. And for instance, Pittsburgh came out on top as potential to have the most avoided health harms from energy efficiency, and it was, I believe, around $200 per person per year. So we've been talking a lot about energy efficiency and reduced pollutants and how that can impact public health, but there are also a whole host of other benefits from energy efficiency, and it's something that AC TripleE has focused on a lot in the decades that we've been around, is quantifying and understanding all of these other benefits. Of course, when you save energy on your electric bill, that also results in a lower bill, so you're saving money as well over the lifetime of that measure. Also, you have to have people who will manufacture these technologies and install these technologies. So that's a lot of jobs that are created, and particularly with the installation, that's a lot of local jobs to benefit the local economy. It also improves safety and comfort within the building. If you have a better functioning building, the temperature is better controlled, you're going to feel better within your building. And energy efficiency, of course, protects the environment. Beyond looking at things like the reduced pollutants coming from power plants, you also have looking at the heated water discharge that pollutes waterways and harms aquatic life. Energy efficiency can help to avoid that. Industrial pollution, oil spills, groundwater pollution and earthquakes, fossil fuel combustion. We talked a lot about transportation. So the same sort of fuels that, the same sort of pollutants that are coming out of power plants are also coming out of exhaust pipes from vehicles. Coal ash pollution. So all of these things are minimized when you employ energy efficiency because it reduces the need to pollute and the need to have excess energy that you don't need. So what do we mean in terms of what has been happening in the U.S. with energy efficiency. Energy efficiency policies and programs have been around since the 1970s. And since that time, this chart doesn't look at that since the 1970s, but it does go back to 1990. And what we tried to model here was the impact of energy efficiency in terms of the number of power plant equivalents that were avoided. And how we like to think of energy efficiency is that the cleanest kilowatt hour is the one that you don't use in the first place. Energy efficiency can also be used as a tool, as a resource for utilities. So if they're posed with the question of, okay, well, we have new demand, how are we going to meet that new demand? Well, typically a utility would build a new power plant. And that's very costly for you and I as utility customers, but it also means that more pollutants are going to be going up into the atmosphere, and we're going to be breathing that in. So in place of building that new power plant, you can invest in energy efficiency programs to reduce the demand of customers within the territory. So that's how we like to think of energy efficiency, as a resource for utilities, and that's how many utilities think of efficiency as well. And so you can see here that energy efficiency has had a huge impact in the U.S. In the last couple of decades. In 2015, energy efficiency avoided 313 power plant equivalents, and that is equal to a reduction of annual CO2 emissions of 490 million tons in 2015. And if a suite of energy efficiency policies continue through 2030, that could result in 1 billion tons of CO2 reduced annually, amounting to 800 power plant equivalents avoided. Okay. So a couple of more things I want to touch on in the last few minutes I have here. So energy efficiency, the International Energy Agency looked at a suite of different policies and technologies that could reduce emissions out to 2040, looking at a 2-degree reduction scenario. And on the y-axis, you see gigatons of GHG emissions. And you can see energy efficiency here results in nearly half of the projected emission reductions. And that's energy efficiency from all sectors. So it can really have a huge contribution toward addressing climate change. And so you might think, okay, well, energy efficiency is great, but how much does it actually cost? And that's the other great thing about energy efficiency, is that it's actually cheaper to save energy than it is to make energy. So this is a levelized cost of these different energy measures. Energy efficiency, as you can see, it costs on average 2 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's the cheapest when compared to things like wind, utility scale solar, definitely coal, nuclear. So energy efficiency should be the first option. It's the cheapest option, and you can get the biggest bang for your buck. If you're looking at a home and saying, well, I want to just put solar panels on the home, why do I need to make it more efficient? Well, by making it more efficient and tightening up your home, you don't need to have that big of a solar installation on it. You can have a smaller set. So this is the last big point I want to make is this is what's happening across the country. I mentioned some of the scorecards that AC TripleE puts out. We put them out every year, and the State Energy Efficiency Scorecard is one of our most longest standing scorecards. And this shows the progress of how states are doing with a suite of energy efficiency policies, and these 6 areas are what we focus on. Certainly, one of the biggest areas that you can get the majority of energy savings is from utility energy efficiency programs. So that's where the utility sets goals for energy efficiency savings each year, and customers then can tap into those programs and get things like rebates or incentives for installing different energy efficiency measures in their homes or businesses. Also, we include transportation policies, like a reduction in GHGs, vehicle miles traveled, electric vehicles, also building energy codes and compliance. That's where a minimum energy requirement is set for commercial and residential buildings. combined heat and power policies. Combined heat and power is when it's a technology that efficiently uses electricity and thermal energy. And actually, in Hurricane Sandy, it was used as a backup generator. When all the other power plants failed, CHP was able to help buildings stay online and help hospitals and schools be able to function. So it is a resiliency function as well. State government-led initiatives, doing things in the public sector to be able to improve the energy efficiency of public buildings and setting goals, and then also appliance and equipment standards at the state level. And here are some ACE TripleE resources. I mentioned our Saving Energy, Saving Lives report that came out, but we also have a variety of other reports that have come out and we're planning to have come out. And I should mention the Saving Energy, Saving Lives report was released with the Physicians for Social Responsibility, and we also have a fact sheet that we put out on energy efficiency and health with PSR as well. And this, I want to be sure to plug our upcoming conference on health, energy, or health, environment, and energy that's happening in December in New Orleans. So it's a great time to be in New Orleans. And it's the first ever conference on health, environment, and energy for ACE TripleE. We've been known for putting on conferences for decades that have focused on all things energy efficiency. So this is the first year that we're branching out into the health space, and we are inviting all healthcare professionals and people in public health organizations to attend. And we're currently accepting abstracts, and we hope that you'll consider attending or submitting an abstract for a topic of interest.
Okay, thank you, Cassandra, very much.
While we're getting set up, I'm Phil Bogdanoff, Director of the DC Chapter Biodiversity for Livable Climate. I'm also a board member. Organization is headquartered in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was the happy product of a dinner table conversation between a longtime climate activist and a biologist who realized that there's a whole other side of the equation of the carbon issue of global warming that wasn't being addressed, which is the drawdown side and working with nature. So this is the familiar Mauna Loa curve. You can see we've reached, we actually last week passed 410 parts per million. We're into the growing season, so the drawdown has started to occur. This is as of a week ago. The what am I doing? As was mentioned earlier, if you look at the trends, they're not good, despite our best efforts to work towards capping carbon emissions and developing renewables, non-fossil-based versions of energy. We are accelerating the rate at which we're adding CO2 to the air, with the consequent temperature rises and the projections for even more. And the fact that the fourth point here, we have a politically difficult problem. Despite decades of effort, IPCC, even the more recent CCL stuff is a slow process, the politically based, that requires a lot of cooperation that's hard to achieve. And there are increasingly discussions about various geoengineering technical solutions that are actually pretty scary because we don't know what the consequences would be. But this stuff was invented 2.4 billion years ago. It's been field tested, found to be safe. It biodegrades, it recycles, and it's widely distributed. It's everywhere. It's called chlorophyll. It takes sunlight, CO2, and water and makes sugars and carbohydrates. If we go back to this curve, the overall trend is the problem, but the solution is in the up and down jags. So this is the seasonal variation due to what nature does during the growing seasons. 2/3 of the land mass is in the northern hemisphere, 1/3 is in the southern hemisphere. So this is actually a net. You can see that the parts per million variation is close to 10. It's probably closer to 12, 13 if you counterbalance the growing seasons in the southern hemisphere and added them to this. So every year nature draws down 10 to 15 parts per million and puts it into biomass. And if we can figure out how to work with nature to capture that, we need to go from 410 parts per million to at least back to 300 parts per million. That's 110 parts per million. We did 10 parts per million a year. That's, what, 11 years? We could get it all back in the ground. Of course, it requires us cooperating with nature. So the solution is putting nature to work using eco-restoration. There's a new application in agriculture called regenerative agriculture. But just to give you one sort of cut at the power of nature, this is a phytoplankton that's widely distributed in the oceans, Emiliana, not Melania, but Emiliana huxleyi, that produces blooms that can be seen from outer space. And its shells are calcium carbonate. They are a carbon sink when they sink to the bottom of the ocean and accrete, which they did a while ago, over 70 million years. 500 meters of calcium carbonate created the cliffs of Dover. These deposits are widely distributed. This is just one of the more visible ones. Biology has taken what otherwise would have been a bare, cold and hot rock, like Mercury is now, and turned into a place of life. And there are various theories about how homeostasis is maintained by that life. But if we engage that, we have the power to take the CO2 out of the air and put it back in the soils. This is a pine seedling. It's got a root system, but the root system has been augmented by fungal networks. It turns out plants, in addition to producing the carbons and sugars for growing the green stuff below ground and the roots below ground, plants exude sometimes as much as 40% of those sugars and share them in symbiotic relationships with the fungal networks. So they feed the underground soil life. The fungal networks bring back the nutrients, the water, etc. With a healthy soil life, you have healthier plants, healthier food. It's one of the connections to the medical community is eat good food. We've lost about 50% of the nutritional value of some of our foods because of what we've done to the soil. And regenerative agriculture is proposing to pay more attention to what goes on in the soil. So we have some animals that can work with us, cows. Grasses and herbivores co-evolved about 50 million years ago. And when that happened, the speciation created actually a cool down, drawing and creating a drawdown of carbon through the grasses and the animals and putting carbon in the soil and increasing soil organic matter. We also have beavers, hydrological engineers. When the Pilgrims landed, there were about 220 millions across North America. About 10% of the land was underwater because of the pondings that they had created. We trapped the beavers. We're now down to about 20 million. A lot of those ponds just broke down. The water and sediment eroded. The water is no longer kept on the land as long. We've got dead zone in the Gulf as a result of that. We're now trying to bring beaver back. California has a program to bring them back to the Sierras as a way to counter the loss of snowpack due to climate change by hopefully having beavers creating ponds at higher elevation so that the water stream flows can run year-round that the agriculture is dependent upon. Worms eat detritus. They mix it up. They distribute it. They also create pathways for water to infiltrate, allowing rainwater to be absorbed more readily, raising water tables and so forth. I just want to give you some before and after comparisons of the power of nature. This was a piece of eroded land that was planted with grasses, brought back the water systems, even brought back a dog. We have ways of mimicking behavior of beavers in upland forests to reduce erosion by building simple check dams with readily available materials in forests that over time capture the silt and infiltrate and allow the water to percolate. This was a piece of land in Mexico that using management was brought back 2 years later. So all that green stuff is more carbon that's sequestered. There's about an equal amount below ground as above ground. This was a piece of land that was heavily grazed and had been in this state for decades, using holistic planned grazing, which is a way of mimicking wild herds using domesticated animals and cattle. They brought it back to this. They actually, through this process, raised the water table about 6 feet. This is a place in near the Chihuahuan Desert in Mexico where a rancher created this artificial pond, but then over the course of 25 years managed the land to bring back the vegetation. There's actually 6 times more water in this picture than in the previous picture, and the stocking rate was doubled in order to keep up with the grass that was growing. This is just, you're familiar with this example. You know, on a hot day, air temperature 90 degrees, the asphalt's 120 degrees. The coolest place is in the shade underneath those bushes where it's about 60 degrees. Part of the process is the evapotranspiration that occurs. That sun's energy is transformed into latent heat, not sensate heat from like the asphalt, which is infrared, which raises the ambient temperature. That latent heat is in the water vapor, then it rises to about 20,000 feet and eventually condenses and turns into rain. When it condenses, it releases about half that heat to space. So restoring water cycles, you can create a sort of small-scale air conditioning to cool the surface of the earth. Another example, the water Gandhi in India restored 7 river systems and assisted 1,000 villages. This is Elko, Nevada. I know I'm running up against my time limit here. I'm having trouble. Why is this not? Nevada is the state that gets the least rain, less than 10 inches a year. This is a partnership between a stream ecologist and a rancher to try to manage the land to allow greater infiltration through the grasses. And over a period of time, they brought back the water level, and beavers actually found the stream and contributed even more. Whoops. I guess I don't have it in this picture. But we are now doing similar things, rain gardens in urban environments. I just want to get to this slide to finish. This is a map of the quality of our soils around the world. Humans have used, abused, and abandoned about 14 billion acres of land. It's no longer, that once was productive but has been desertified. It looks like desert now, but it wasn't originally. It's sort of dry grasslands. Through management of animals, we now know how to restore that land. So, and we can also apply some of these practices. There's a new certification coming out, regenerative organic, where people pass the organic standard and the food they produce must meet certain qualities that indicate that they are treating the soil in a way that restores the health of the soil. So this is the potential we have through nature to draw down in a very rapid period of time if we support our farmers and ranchers to manage the land properly. So the health benefits occur through the reduction in heat loads, better water quality, and better nutrition in the food that we produce. So I invite you all to kind of explore this, learn about it, and talk about it. The analogy is, you know through your experience working with the human body, the power of nature to heal. We now need to do the same thing with nature, get out of the way, help, stop doing the bad things, help do the good things so that we can restore our ecosystem and hopefully our climate. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Philip. Thank you all. Unfortunately, to keep on schedule, we have to close this panel. I'm going to ask my panelists to actually come to the front of the room at the coffee break, if you would, because I know there's a lot of questions. So just to reiterate, we've heard 3 incredibly important points about prevention. The first being we need an economy-wide, border-adjustable, revenue-neutral carbon tax that is a solution commensurate with the problem. Citizens Climate Lobby has proposed that for us. Energy efficiency improves public health. That's brilliant. Something for us all to remember every day, certainly on our visits this afternoon. And finally, we need to work with nature to pull carbon pollution back out of the atmosphere and put it back in the ground where it belongs. So please join me in thanking our panel one more time.
Okay, I'd like to ask our next panel to come forward if you haven't already. This is the panel on the health sector, and our first speaker is Jeff Thompson. We're delighted to have Jeff here this morning. He has come all the way from Wisconsin, which is a long way to travel. And why I'm having trouble finding my... It's all right. Jeff Thompson is the former CEO of Gunderson Health System, and he was instrumental in transforming that health system, which he's going to tell you about this morning. He's been highly recognized around the country, and we're delighted to have him here. We're very fortunate to have him here. Please welcome him.
So as not to make a mistake, how do you advance the piece? Maybe we could all hear that, so then we would know that. And if we go just slide to slide. The button. Okay, that'd be great. Okay, outstanding. And Mona, are we going to share speaker slides with the rest of the people? Is it going to be posted someplace? I'm happy to do that.
We'll post them after the conference.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. And how much time, given the time, will we each have?
I'm trying to keep it to under 7 minutes.
Under 7 minutes. Perfect. That's all we need. So, no sleeping and back off on your emails. Okay, here's the deal. I think we all understand the moral imperative that's out there. I mean, if that's not clear, well, you wouldn't be sitting here. You know the moral imperative. And it's pretty clear we have the technology to do this. So why aren't we going further, faster? And I'm going to argue and try and give us a way forward that it's about courage. It's about courage to follow the values that we've already stated, and discipline to make sure that courage turns into something useful. So I'm going to talk about courage and discipline. So one of the courageous pieces that we have to do is look at what we're really doing as an organization, as individuals, as a country or a community. And Collins says you have to face the brutal facts. Here's our brutal facts. In 2008, we looked at what our health system, a billion-dollar health system, 7,000 employees, taking care of 500,000 people, what were we doing to heat, power, cool, and take care of these patients? We were putting 465,000 pounds of particulate matter into the atmosphere. 465,000 pounds every year that made our patients sicker. 70 million pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere. How many organizations, how many health systems know what they're putting into the atmosphere that's making their patients sick? So part of it is to just face the brutal facts. Part is to say, we know, we're clinicians, we know, something that has been mentioned, these pollutants, these heavy metals change your DNA. Well, not the DNA code, but the epigenetic modifiers that tell your DNA how to work, that pass generation to generation. 10% of these modifications pass with the sperm and the egg, are what we're putting into the atmosphere. It's what we're putting into the water. It's what we're putting into the soil. So you have to take a responsibility. So in the face of this, we said we will go with Cassandra's recommendation and start with conservation. Over an 8-year period, we dropped our energy expenditure per square foot in our organization by 59%. Not 5, not 15, 59%. We made money on that. I'm going to tell you about the money a little more because everybody goes to the money. We invested $2 million in conservation. I made $1.2 million every year thereafter. $2 million invested, $1.2 million every after. I bet none of you have a 60% return on your savings account. So what we did is measure hard. This is the discipline part. The courage to say we're going to get there. We said we were going to decrease this. By 2016, we had dropped our particulate emissions and our greenhouse gases by 95%. At the same time, our quality went up, top 5% in the country. Our service went to the top 10% in the country. Our finances improved. We saved more money during those 14 years, this plus a few more, than we had in the 114 years before. You can't tell me it's about jobs or the environment, the economy, your bottom line, or the environment. It's just not true. It's just not true. You can do these things. Now, was it easy? No. You have to set a goal. What's our national goals for health or the environment? Dead silence. It's because we don't have any. We spend $3.5 trillion on health and we don't have any goals. Finland has goals. Costa Rica has goals. Rwanda has goals, and they have better public health measures than we do in this country. We don't have goals. We set goals. We set the goals. It took conservation, as we already talked about. We did a variety of other things to try and make it work. The basic things, change out your lights, of course. Immediately you get a return on that. We did some more unusual things. Remember that cow that we had up here earlier? Yeah, it poops. What do you do with the poop? To keep the phosphorus from running off into the water? You save it. You take it like this. This is the only thing you'll remember from the day. That the absolute best ratio of cow poop to pizza grease to make methane is 60-40. You didn't know. Even these old guys up front didn't know that. They know it now. 60-40, we use waste that would have gone to the landfill, cow manure that would have run into the thing. We make electricity and we make money on that. To be more resilient, instead of taking natural gas from Texas, has to come through pipelines. We have a biomass boiler that burns discarded hardwood chips from Wisconsin lumber mills in a high-tech furnace at 1,800 degrees. Water vapor comes out the top, decreases pollution, saves us money every single day, and improves the local economy. So don't tell me you can't do both. You can't do them all. You can do them all. Now, you'd say, wow, you're eliminating Gunderson's carbon footprint. You know, the National Health Service in England measured the carbon footprint of the drugs we use, the carbon footprint of the equipment and materials we use, just as big as the energy. Right, so we have a lot of work to do. One of the biggest complaints is, how are you going to pay for this? Who would pay for this? This is craziness. Well, it was pretty crazy. We measured that as well. This is discipline. This is thinking differently. You have to have the courage to think differently. We took some of our savings, 5% of our savings that were stocks and bonds, and all big health systems have some savings, and invested it locally. Well, there's a thought. How about locally rather than the stock market? And we did it locally, and our returns over that time period were twice what we got on Wall Street. We divested, as we can say. We used partners. Healthcare Without Harm is a great partner. There's a new group called the Health Anchor Network that says, how do we work as universities as societies, as healthcare organizations together to improve the health and well-being of our community. We can do this. We can do this. So it is, I'm not saying this is easy. It's hard. It takes courage, it takes discipline. Of course, it takes durability to go through because you can get pounded along the way. And now this sounds completely self-promoting, but I don't get any returns from this. Here's a book. I happen to write a book. The book takes stories from all over the country in healthcare and industry and says, what kind of courage, what kind of discipline, what kind of durability does it take to really live the mission of all of our organizations that we're a part of, all the things that we say. It's a foundation that helps leadership development, that gets all the funds. My contact information is there. My request to you is that the moral imperative and the technology is right there. It just takes some courage to get doing things, not just saying things. We have to do things. Thanks.
Okay, our next speaker is Todd Sack, Dr. Todd Sack, who lectures widely on climate change, environmental sustainability, and energy policy. He's the editor of My Green Doctor, a free service for medical offices and outpatient facilities, used in 32 countries and 30 U.S. states, bringing topics of climate change and environmental sustainability to offices and particularly to waiting rooms. Dr. Sack serves on the board of directors of Physicians for Social Responsibility, chaired for 10 years the Environmental and Health section of the Florida Medical Association. Welcome, Dr. Sack.
Thank you, Mona. Can you hear me in the back? When I start to mumble, wave your hands, please. I'd like to cede a few moments of my time to thank Mona Safardi. Mona, what you've done is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, but... So today's about solutions, and I'm going to continue in that theme. We've just heard about how hospitals have been part of the problem and are now emerging to be a great part of the solution, and Mr. Thompson's leadership is spectacular in this. I'm going to show you the other piece of it, which I would argue is the bigger piece, which is our offices and outpatient medical facilities around the room. And I'd like to propose to you that the 5 billion patient hours spent every year waiting in waiting rooms around the world could be sites for teaching about climate change and environmental health, for teaching our patients and our communities about how to do this better. And I'm going to offer you a tool for your professional organizations. My talk is called Going Green, 10 Weeks to a Healthier Climate and Healthcare Office, but it's really about setting up a process whereby outpatient offices and facilities around the world can get green and then have an ongoing process through the Green Team model to stay green. I'm speaking really on behalf of 2 organizations today, Physicians for Social Responsibility and My Green Doctor. We're all proud to be affiliates of the consortium. The other organizations involved in My Green Doctor are the Florida Medical Association, the World Medical Association, the Florida Academy of Family Physicians, and the International Association of Medical Students Associations. And what we're going to do is talk to you a bit about the My Green Doctor model and offer the opportunity to partner with us. So why might your medical societies, your professional organizations, your members want to go green? We start by giving you 10 reasons to go green, because going green leads to wiser uses of resources, saves money by lowering office expenses, creates a healthier work environment, encourages teamwork and finding ways to do things better in the office. They generate ideas from every member of the office. Green teams are easy, enjoyable, and satisfying. Having a green team and environmental sustainability enhances the office's public image and patient trust in the office. Of course, decreases in air pollution, water consumption, and waste are major goals. But the real issue is to build a healthier community, to put environmental sustainability into everyone's life, and in this way for the healthcare community to further address the threat of climate change. So I'm talking now about this tool called My Green Doctor. This is a practice management tool for healthcare offices. It guides green teams to be created and to succeed. My Green Doctor is created by physicians to be fun and easy to use. It's suitable for any outpatient office and is used worldwide. It's evidence-based, science-based, and non-political. The key issue, though, it's tailored to be used by all and any members of the medical staff. No science background is needed, and for that reason, we're now used in 30 states and 32 countries. We begin by encouraging users to register at the website, and I would welcome each of you to register at the website, www.mygreendoctor.org. It gives access to this complete environmental sustainability service for outpatient offices. It's free, safe, takes under 3 minutes to register, no passwords are needed, and the registering office and individual gets a certificate to display in their waiting room just for registering, to demonstrate their pledge that this office is pledging to go green. And the point of that is we want to give immediate feedback to the office staff and to their patients that something special is going on here. We then introduce offices to the Green Team process, which is an established management tool used successfully by businesses worldwide. We want offices to make having a Green Team an official policy and official practice for your medical office. We encourage teams to meet weekly just for 5 minutes as part of what might be a regular office staff meeting. So everyone in the office is there in the room for their weekly staff meeting to go over other issues affecting the office practice, make a 5-minute Green Team part of that meeting. And we recommend slow, steady improvements as guided by My Green Doctor. We make this very easy for the office managers, and honestly, it isn't the doctors who do this. The doctors are busy, they're doing other things. It tends to be the office manager or a nurse practitioner in the office or a clerk or some other person who takes interest in getting the Green Team going. We offer the meeting-by-meeting guide, which explains exactly what to do and say at each of the first 10 Green Team meetings. There's really nothing for the leader to research or prepare in advance. We focus on slow, steady improvements on topics like energy and water and chemicals and transportation and healthy foods, healthy for the office and healthy for the environment. We encourage discussion and participation. And we provide a Green Team notes form, so it's very easy for the staff to keep track of their accomplishments. And we offer a My Green Doctor office certificate for accomplishing some of the early goals of the My Green Doctor program. We require 5 Green Team meetings, 5 action steps, and critically 5 education steps. Educating the staff and the patients and the community are a big part of My Green Doctor, and we offer tools for education, brochures, posters, things like that. The Green Doctor certificate is valid for 3 years, and it's free to any of our partner organizations members, though $250 for 3 years to physician offices whose members don't belong to a partner organization. Now I want to give you an example of a success story. This is the Escambia County Health Department in Western Florida that used the My Green Doctor program. They have 5 offices, primarily primary care. They found they saved energy and money every month, about 5.2% electricity savings per year, 125,000 kilowatts of electricity, 85,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide, the equivalent of 4,300 gallons of gasoline. The bottom line, in their 5 offices, they're saved $14,000 annually and have continued to save every year in the 7 years since they began this program. With no investment, by the way. They didn't even have to put in the $2 million to save $1 million. This is low-lying fruit that any outpatient facility has access to if they simply roll up their sleeves 5 minutes a week and go green. So in summary, my key points, going green saves money and offers other benefits to the office and to the environment. The Green Team is an established management process. Green Teams are easy, enjoyable, and satisfying for everybody in the office to participate in. The Green Team becomes a regular part of the office. It's a way we do business in our office. This is how we go green as a profession and as a society. And it's done simply by adding 5 minutes of Green Team to a weekly staff meeting. The office follows our easy meeting-to-meeting guide, and they earn their Green Doctor Office certificate in 3 months, and then go on to continue improvements in the years ahead. I want to encourage you to register and start your Green Team. Even if you don't work in a medical office, you can work in an office that goes green itself. And again, thank the consortium and Mona, and thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Jessica Wolf, who's the U.S. Director of Climate and Health for Healthcare Without Harm and for Practice Green Health. She leads the Healthcare Without Harm team in developing strategies to engage and support the healthcare sector in working on climate solutions and in becoming a leading voice on climate change. Welcome.
Thanks, Mona. Hello, everyone. I think this first slide is really why we're all here. We know healthcare has an opportunity and a responsibility to use our ethical, economic, and political influence to advance the transition to a low-carbon future where healthy people can live on a healthy planet. No, it's not going to work. Here we go. Healthcare Without Harm was founded in 1996 and works to transform healthcare worldwide to reduce its environmental footprint, to anchor community sustainability and resilience, and to become a leader in the worldwide movement for environmental health and justice. We have 4 regional offices on 4 continents, and we work through partner organizations in 6 other countries. Our first campaign in the mid-90s was on mercury elimination. This campaign started in one Boston hospital and scaled to a global collaboration with the World Health Organization. In 2013, world governments signed the Minamata Convention on mercury elimination, committing to phase out mercury in medical devices by 2020. So coming soon, so a really wonderful success story, but a long one. We're now working on the more urgent issue of climate change and addressing it through the transition to climate-smart healthcare. Healthcare Without Harm is really a network of organizations. We have Practice Green Health, which is our U.S. membership arm, which has 1,100 hospital members. We have a global green and healthy hospital network, which is made up of more than 1,000 members in 52 countries, representing more than 32,000 hospitals and health centers. And in 2016, Healthcare Without Harm and Practice Green Health and several leading health systems, including Gunderson, started Green Health Exchange, which is a supply chain organization to help health systems identify, source, contract, and purchase sustainable products and services. We work in a 3-pillar climate-smart framework: mitigation, resilience, and leadership. We understand that these pillars don't stand alone. They overlap, they intersect, they're reliant on each other, and they reinforce each other. And that's our strategy to move climate-smart healthcare forward. In 2014, we formed the U.S. Healthcare Climate Council. This is a leadership body of health systems who've committed to protect their employees, patients, and communities from the health impacts of climate change. The Healthcare Climate Council is made up of 18 leading health systems representing over 500 hospitals in 27 states and 240 congressional districts. They have an aggregate operating revenue of more than $165 billion and employ 1 million people nationwide. The way we work, or our model of change, is we work with health systems through education, training, peer learning, and developing implementation tools. We start using our Healthcare Climate Council as our innovators and as an incubator, and we pilot the climate solutions and identify them with our council members. We then scale those solutions through our 1,100 hospital Practice Green Health member network, and then we aggregate the purchasing power and influence of that network to move the market and move policy. I want to quickly, and I know we're so time limited, run through some of the resources we've released in the last year to support this 3-pillar framework. So in the mitigation front, we released last summer a climate action playbook for hospitals. And this playbook uses examples from our Healthcare Climate Council members of climate solutions in all different areas of the hospital, from energy, transportation, food, resilience. And the goal is to encourage other hospitals to act and create a measurable path for progress. In the resilience pillar, At the end of 2017, we released a white paper with PricewaterhouseCoopers called Safe Haven in the Storm, Protecting Lives and Margins with Climate Smart Healthcare. This paper looks at the financial impacts of being ill-prepared for extreme weather, and then looks at the operational and financial benefits of preparedness, and ends with how smart executives can take action. The paper was created with concise case studies and really clear infographics to help make the business case for resilience to your leadership. We've created a companion slide deck to go along with this paper to help people present this to their leadership. Also, in the resilience front, we released the Climate and Health Community Benefit Toolkit. These are tools and resources for the community benefit staff at hospitals. It's to help that staff identify climate-related health risks in their communities, to identify the climate co-benefits of projects that are underway, and to help them then integrate the climate and health into their community health needs assessment process, which nonprofit hospitals are required to do. In the leadership pillar, what we're seeing is our health institutions are having a growing interest in talking to legislators about climate and health. In November of last year, the Healthcare Climate Council came to DC, and we had held an educational briefing for the staff of the members of the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus on climate resilience. We've also had health institutions speaking to support renewable portfolio standards in Ohio and Massachusetts. And public policy advocacy is really important, but there's lots of different ways to lead. And one of the things we try very hard to do is create a variety of opportunities for our network. So these are all options for leadership. We have recently launched, under the leadership of Amy Collins, who's an emergency medicine physician in Massachusetts and is right there. Amy, wave to everyone. We launched our physician network, and the Healthcare Without Harm Physician Network is a network for hospital-based physicians to share best practices to advance climate-smart healthcare and to advocate for a sustainable and healthy future. In May, in conjunction with the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, we are launching the Nurses Climate Challenge. And that challenge will be for nurses to educate 5,000 health professionals on climate and health using tools and resources that we've developed. And then in June, leading up to the Global Climate Action Summit in September in San Francisco, we're going to be rebranding and relaunching our Healthcare Climate Challenge. This challenge is an initiative to engage healthcare institutions globally to protect the public health from climate change. Currently, that challenge has 163 members from 24 countries, representing 14,000 hospitals and health centers. So lots of opportunities to engage and participate with us. If I had another 3.5 minutes, I would show you this wonderful video. If you haven't seen it, it's called Do No Harm, and it's at donoharmstory.org. And it features one of everyone's favorite pediatricians, Dr. Aparna Bowl. Shout out to Aparna. It's very inspiring, and I will say that when I worked at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health in New Hampshire, we opened our general orientation section of our sustainability with this video, and it's a wonderful video to share and to use at presentations. It really talks about why healthcare has that moral imperative to work on climate. So with that, thank you very much, and I can be reached here, jwolf@healthcarewithout.hcwh.org. Thank you.
I have done spill cleanup in a previous life.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Paulette Frank, who's the Vice President Worldwide of Worldwide Environment, Health, Safety, and Sustainability at Johnson & Johnson. Paulette provides thought leadership and strategic direction to advance the organization's environment, health, safety, and sustainability mission across the breadth of its businesses. So welcome.
Thank you, Mona. Red button? Okay, good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today in a room full of healthcare practitioners. In a lot of ways, the sustainability team at Johnson & Johnson feels like an extension of you in that we share a common mission to help people be healthy and well. We just happen to do it through the lens of protecting environmental health. Oh, I'm not following directions. So we have a long history in our commitment to environmental health. Actually goes way beyond this chart. Started really when the company started. The Johnson brothers who started J&J were very vocal advocates that companies had to deliver social value in order to have the right to exist. Many quotes in our history from our founding fathers talking about the social responsibility of organizations. That was codified in our ethos and our credo 75 years ago. We're actually celebrating the 75th anniversary of our credo this year. And it goes through what those social responsibilities look like for Johnson & Johnson. And in the third paragraph, it explicitly states our responsibility to protect the natural resources that we're privileged to use as an organization. We've been setting public commitments around environmental stewardship since the late 1980s, so for 3 decades. And the real takeaway from this slide is that our goals have evolved over 3 decades in terms of the scope, the ambition, getting bigger, and also bringing in goals around people. And really at the heart of that, recognizing that the health of people and the health of the planet are inextricably linked. They're very interconnected. Specifically around energy and climate, also been setting public goals for quite a long time. Some of the things that I'll highlight here. In 2011, we installed our first solar array. We now have 45 solar arrays in 13 countries around the world. In 2005, we established what we call our carbon fund. It's a capital relief fund set aside, so it's capital that we set aside specifically for energy efficiency projects. These projects have to be financially viable, and they are. They have great returns on investment. Over the first decade that this carbon fund was in place, we reduced our carbon emissions by 20%, and we also reduced our energy bills by 20%. So to the previous points that were made, energy efficiency, having commitments in this space are very, very good for business. You can do both. Also, we'll point out that we joined RE100. I think you heard about that earlier yesterday. We joined in 2015 and have an aspiration to run our business on 100% renewable energy by 2050. Last year, we signed our first PPA, so we've been building solar arrays, and also we have some wind turbines in our network for the past decade or so. Last year, we signed our first power purchase agreement, and we really catapulted our use of renewable energy through this mechanism. Just yesterday, we announced publicly another one that we signed in Georgia. So one of the takeaways and messages towards the end of what I wanted to share with you today is sort of the lens that you look at in terms of your potential impact. There's sort of what's in your control within your 4 walls, your offices, your buildings, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there to help advance energy efficiency, renewable energy, and we've been very focused on our 4 walls for a really long time. But then as you kind of go out, sort of your spheres of influence beyond what you can control, there are many suppliers that we work with that also have carbon footprints that we can help educate, help build their capacity to set goals for themselves and do better. Our products and our business models, how do we integrate thinking about climate and other environmental impacts and how we design our products? And then finally, the world. There's a big world out there, a big canvas with which we can have an impact. And because of our size and our scale and frankly our voice, we can use that for a lot of good in the world. So we have efforts and we look across this entire landscape as an opportunity for Johnson & Johnson to help make a difference in this space. I am like so parched right now. Okay. So when it comes to our environmental aspirations, we really are inspired by who we are, right? Our purpose is to change the trajectory of health for humanity, and we frankly can't do that with also taking care of the health of our planet. Healthy people need to have a healthy planet, and that's where we get the inspiration for our ambition when it comes to the environment. And we articulate our ambition in two ways. One is very practical. It's simply how we want to run our business. And frankly, just as like you have a financial budget, you have an environmental budget. We have one planet to work with. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Living Planet report. It comes out every 2 years. The World Wildlife Fund publishes it. And for the past couple of reports, it's unfortunately been saying the same thing, that by 2030, we're going to need 2 planets to sustain our consumption of natural resources at the pace where the society is consuming them today. Last I saw, we have one planet. So we want to operate our business on a one planet budget. It's just practical. Hard to argue it. Our second ambition is more emotional. It's more connected to our purpose as a healthcare company. It's more connected to using our size and our voice for good. And frankly, it's really what's exciting about the work that we're doing. You know, the first ambition is nuts and bolts, right? It's sort of it's what every company in the 21st century has to do in order to be a responsible company. But this is sort of J&J's secret sauce. Oh my gosh, thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you, that's awesome. So it's this message that we want to try to take to the masses, because similar to what was said yesterday, we think there's magic in connecting the health of our planet to our own personal health and well-being. We believe that's going to ignite behavior change at the scale that we haven't seen yet, for whatever reason. We think this is the universal message that's going to appeal to the masses, and we want to help you amplify this message. And it's why we're partnering with new partners for the first time. You know, we've partnered, for years with conservation organizations, and we still do. We always will. But now we seek out partnerships like with Mona and you to help you amplify and get this message out. Working with change agents and trusted advisors who people will listen to and be motivated to change their behavior. So, one of the things we've learned is we have to kind of widen those concentric circles. We have to widen the aperture on our lens to really, truly see where we can have the most impact. It's not to say, we shouldn't be doing what we're doing in our 4 walls. We absolutely have to do that work. But there's so much more impact we can have when we look just a little bit broader and a little bit broader. And I encourage you to think about it the same. There's the work you can do in your offices. There's the work you can do with your partners that you work with every day. And then there's even more you could possibly do on a world stage by using your voices as trusted advisors to spread this message. And I'm going to end on a story that I have told before, but not to you. I don't think you've heard it. It's one of my favorite stories. I get a lot of inspiration from my children, who say the most remarkable things, as most children do. And this was a long time ago at this point. My oldest son was 5. And we were driving along an interstate to a local museum. And he was behind me in his car seat. And we were driving along this interstate, and I heard him say, "Mommy, what's coming out of those tall things that coming out of those buildings?" And I said, "Well, it's steam." It was white smoke. I said, "Oh, it's steam." And he said, "Does it make God cough?" And to the point that was made yesterday, this is such a simple message. Everyone gets it. Even a 5-year-old can get it. So we have so much hope in this. And to the extent that we can help amplify your voices, we intend to help. Thank you.
Okay, and our next speaker is Chet Robson, who's the Medical Director of Clinical Programs and Quality for Walgreens. Dr. Robson provides medical guidance with evidence-based clinical review, maintains the mission with program development and training, and expands the mission with clinically driven strategy and innovation. Welcome.
Good morning. As Mona said, my name is Chet Robson. I'm the Medical Director at Walgreens, representing our global pharmacy-led company, Walgreens Boots Alliance. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to speak with you this morning and share some of our experience at addressing climate change, which is very similar to what you've heard from a number of people, which is assessing where you are, coming up with mitigation strategies, measuring how well you accomplish that, and then setting new goals. In the U.S., most of you know our company is Walgreens, which was founded in 1901. It has grown from a single store in Chicago to forming the global company of Walgreens Boots Alliance in 2014. Globally, we have over 385,000 employees, and in the U.S., Walgreens has over 235,000 employees. In just the U.S., we have over 78,000 healthcare providers, pharmacists, pharmacy techs, nurse practitioners, and physicians. Globally, we have over 13,200 stores in 11 countries with a presence in 25 countries. We have over 8,100 stores in the U.S., District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and Virgin Islands. And we have 390 distribution centers in 20 countries. But despite being a global company, we have a very local presence, with 76% of the U.S. population within 5 miles of a Walgreens. Just in the U.S., each day, in just our pharmacies, we interact with over 8 million people, and last year we dispensed approximately 1 billion prescriptions. Our corporate social responsibility goals are in accordance with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These are the 6 that we incorporate into our environment pillar. This is a graphic probably many of you have seen from the CDC. In the U.S., public health is affected by disruptions of physical, biological, and ecological systems. The effects of these disruptions include disease, premature death, injury, and threats to mental health, just to name a few. At Walgreens Boots Alliance, we approach this challenge with environmental responsibility and mitigation strategies which lead to climate and the ultimate health resiliency. As healthcare providers at WBA, we see our environmental responsibility as defining and owning our current state of environmental and climate impact. On the energy front, our total carbon footprint in fiscal 2017 was 2.3 million metric tons, which was reduced compared to 2016 by 6.5%. 86% of our energy used is to power our stores, and 94% of that is in the form of electricity. On the waste front, we generated 626,000 metric tons of waste in 2017. 50% of that was recycled, 48% went to landfills, and 2% was incinerated. We do have businesses in Norway and the Netherlands that are already at zero waste to landfills. Deforestation is important to WBA because we use significant amounts of wood, paper, palm oil, soy, and beef in our businesses and supply chain. Therefore, WBA is a signatory to the Consumer Goods Forum commitment to achieve zero net deforestation by 2020. Mitigation, then, is the programs and strategies that we utilize to address climate change. On the energy front, we have lowered electricity consumption with lighting upgrades, replacement of heating and cooling equipment, and developed an energy-conscious culture. We've adopted ultra-low global warming potential refrigerants and installed new HVAC systems. We've installed photovoltaic solar panels on 240 stores and distribution centers, and we've installed over 400 charging stations for electric vehicles. We have 800 privately owned trucks that participate in the U.S. EPA SmartWay program, which has improved fuel efficiency by 3.2%. On the waste front, we are participating in the Beyond 34 recycling program in Orlando, and progress has been made on the Zero Waste to Landfill project in Moreno Valley, California, and we are set to expand that to 4 more centers. We have diverted more than 1.6 metric tons of product to Feeding America, which helps to reduce greenhouse gases, and we participate in the shredded recycling process, resulting in decreased oil, kilowatts of energy, landfill space, water, and trees saved. WBA integrates standards for wood, pulp, and paper based on forest certification standards, such as the Forest Stewardship Council. During 2017, Walgreens redesigned our logo so that it will be able to print more labels on one sheet of paper. It is estimated to save over 1.7 pounds of paper or over 6,000 trees per year. And the paper that we use in advertising and products is purchased only from certified sources. Climate resiliency, then, is the way we measure recovery in climate change. On the energy front, our goal is to reduce our energy consumption and Scope 1 and Scope 2 direct and indirect emissions on a comparable basis as defined by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. Boots UK reached its May Day commitment of 30% carbon footprint reduction by 2020, 3 years early by achieving a 33% reduction this past year in 2017. And Walgreens is on track to achieve a 20% reduction by 2020, made in partnership with the U.S. Department of Energy's Better Buildings Challenge. On the waste front, our goal is to reduce the waste we create on a comparable basis and to contribute to the drive for increasingly circular economies through increased reuse and recycling. Walgreens' safe medication disposable kiosks have a positive climate impact by keeping medications out of landfills and waterways. We are expanding that to 1,500 stores, and so far in just over a year, we have already collected over 155 tons of medication. Our goal is to collect an additional 300 tons over the next 2 years. Deforestation, our goal is to develop plans to help achieve zero net deforestation by 2020, and we are collaborating with other organizations on several global initiatives. We are well along on the journey to 100% sustainable timber and timber products by 2020. As healthcare providers, we all know the importance of treating the cause and not just the symptoms, although certainly all of us do that. At Walgreens Boots Alliance, at a global, national, and community level, we are working to treat the cause of the changes we are seeing on the human health by defining and owning our environmental responsibility, addressing these challenges with mitigation strategies that will lead to climate resiliency and the resultant health resiliency. As a fellow healthcare provider, thank you for the opportunity to share some of our efforts and to explore and learn from each of you how to better address climate change for the benefit of our patients and our communities. Thank you.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes for some questions, comments, or discussion. The 2 mics on either side are live, and if you ask the questions there, then they'll be part of the live streaming. So let's start over on the left.
No. Well, I'll just, okay. I have 2 questions, if I may. Thank you for all of your talks. I appreciated all of them. I'm Beth Gillespie, here from Denver. I'm representing the Society for General Internal Medicine. I'm very interested in this topic. The first question is for Jessica Wolf. And I know that Healthcare Without Harm's efforts have been mainly grassroots. And I'm just wondering if there are any outreach efforts to leaders classified as the American Hospital Alliance, Association or healthcare executives to disseminate your priority for sustainability in healthcare. And then my second question is for the other business leaders, Johnson & Johnson and Walgreens. I'm wondering what weight I forget the exact name, but the Sustainable Business Accounting Group, if that sounds familiar, has in your practices. And if it doesn't sound familiar, then just ignore the question, because I forget the exact name of the organization. But I know that they've developed recent guidelines for sustainability. So.
Do I push this to make it work?
If you see a green light, it should be on.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for the question. Actually, Healthcare Without Harm and Practice Green Health, we do some grassroots work, but most of what we do is work with institutions. And our primary liaisons to those institutions are the sustainability professionals that work in the hospitals. So most of our work is on the institutional level with hospital-based clinicians and other stakeholders. So many of our resources, like the Safe Haven report, for instance, which is talking about the business case for climate resilience, is really targeted to that C-suite, and we keep that in mind, and we support our internal sustainability champions in making change inside those institutions, and then providing opportunities for leadership for those institutions outside their four walls. But what you see in healthcare, which you see in all businesses, is until you start cleaning up your own house, you don't want to be very public about asking other people to do that kind of work. And that's why Jeff Thompson is a wonderful spokesperson, because he has cleaned up his house.
So I think you're referring to, I hope I get it right, SASB. It's the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. And there are many different approaches to measuring and reporting sustainability performance. We follow GRI, which is the Global Reporting Initiative. It's been around for a really long time. So we publish an annual report, and we use the GRI metrics as our framework for reporting our progress.
Along those lines, you guys do GRI. In 2015, when the Sustainable Development Goals came out, like thousands of companies all around the planet jumped on board. How have you guys managed, the Walgreens and Johnson & Johnson, to utilize the SDGs, and have you found it as difficult as many other large corporations? Because there's been a bit of a stall in incorporating that into GRI reporting. None of you guys use SASB, correct? Yet.
Not correct.
SASB's too new, but you use GRI. So how have you found that with the SDGs?
Go first? Okay. So when the SDGs came out, we already had our 2020 Health for Humanity goals, and we did go through an exercise of mapping them, and I think almost all of them, if not all of them, mapped to because SDGs are a very broad set of buckets for goal setting. Almost every goal we already had set a year or two earlier fit into a bucket and supported an SDG. We also took it, though, as an opportunity to set some more aspirational goals. So, for example, in the environmental health SDG, we set a goal related to our partnership with C40 in that we wanted to touch 100 million people in some positive way through the work of connecting climate action with air quality improvements, with better health outcomes for urban citizens. So while we already had a set of sustainability goals, we set a new one in the environmental health space under the SDG framework. We took it as an opportunity to be even more, to push ourselves a little bit more.
So it's easier for you probably because you are a healthcare company to do SDGs.
I don't know if it's easier or harder for any individual company to set SDGs. They're a pretty broad framework. There should be something for everybody in the SDGs. I mean, I can only speak for how we approached it.
From the Walgreens perspective, even though we're a 100-year-old national company, we're new to being a global company. So 3 years ago when we formed Walgreens Boots Alliance is when we first started to use the sustainability development goals. Similar, we use it as a general framework of where we're going and we have many other goals within that. And I think it's like with many things, it's a stepwise approach. First is set kind of a general framework, then it's begin to have more specificity, and then begin to grow even more in depth for each of those. But for us, it was to use it as a global framework to begin.
I am a psychiatrist. I'm also with Climate Psychiatry Alliance and Citizens Climate Lobby. Today, this morning, seems like the best of a healthcare team with so many people participating in solutions together. As we prepare for this afternoon, when we're going to be meeting with members of Congress, which is the work that a lot of people do in Citizens Climate Lobby, I'm thinking about what we've been talking about, messaging to the public about healthcare as a central vehicle to mobilize a larger policies solutions. And I'm going to ask those of you from Johnson & Johnson and Walgreens to join us, because I think you have the clout and the ability to do a massive kind of public relations kind of endeavor. Is it possible to start making commercials on TV like I see? Have you asked your doctor about this latest drug? And I don't watch a lot of TV, but I see those commercials a lot. Would it be possible to join together? And also your branding would be important to say, have you asked your doctor about your health and how it relates to the health of the planet, or something like that? I think it would be an incredibly useful tool to expand our kind of message about the health links to the health of the climate.
No response. Okay. I'm David Pollack. I'm also a psychiatrist with the Climate Psychiatry Alliance. We're small, but we're loud. And I'm sorry I got here a little late this morning. I was meeting with 5 of the current 6 Robert Wood Johnson Health Policy Fellows who work on the Hill. In fact, I think all of them are going to be meeting some of you today. But my question has to do with especially Health Without Harm and the work that others in the Green Doctors group to get into the health systems. I'm from an academic health center, Oregon Health and Science University in Portland. And years ago, I have been concerned about how many inefficient refrigerators and freezers we have, for all these researchers and the clinics, thousands of them in our big academic health center. And I teach in a health management MBA program and talk about this with students in our health policy course. And the other health systems in the Portland area, Legacy, Providence, and Kaiser, which are not so much research-based, have really done a lot to reduce their energy footprint and their energy spend. But OHSU, when I talked to the president and the dean of the medical school about this, they said, oh, that's a good idea. They came back to me and said, we can't do much about this. This was about 3 or 4 years ago. Because all these people have different grants and they're so decentralized. Have you had much success into getting into academic health centers to do this work, in particular in relation to coordinating and trying to centralize the improved energy efficiency associated with research institutions?
It's an interesting quandary, and we see it a lot. Often at academic health centers, the universities have very strong sustainability programs, but those sustainability folks do nothing with the hospitals or medical schools. Sometimes the hospitals, I worked at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health, we had a strong sustainability program, so did Dartmouth College, but no one was over the medical school work. What you said about researchers, we also tried to do a strong, an 80-degree freezer initiative there because it's a huge waste of energy, and that is a real barrier that they get grants, they're turning over, they don't answer to anyone. There is some very strong work being done, and Alyssa Gordon, there she is. Okay, wonderful. So she'll respond. She does a lot of great work with greening the labs, and there's some really strong work at both academic institutions and healthcare institutions to move that forward. But I do think it's one of those areas. So the UC system, interestingly, the sustainability goals they set include their medical centers. Often you don't see that. In fact, typically you don't see that. So it is an area that we're thinking about, we're working on, but you've identified an area that's very difficult for those research-based institutions.
In a progressive state like ours, we have energy trust, they give rebates for people to turn in their old, and I talk to them, look, it's a win-win, it'd be great PR. They feel like their hands are tied, they can't do much about it.
Let me answer that a little bit different way, which is I think we're all clamoring for solutions. and there's a top-down and a bottom-up way of going about it. I think for great institutions to lead the way we're hearing from our hospital associations is tremendous. But I think the public's also clamoring for ways that they as individuals can get engaged. And so health professionals can work at a very retail level in their own office and in their own home and ask their patients to do the same thing at the same time that we have a top-down approach leading the process.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Gordon from the Cleveland Clinic, and I'm involved in sort of national greening the laboratories efforts. There's two organizations, International Institute for Sustainable Laboratories, and they have primarily been in industry, government, and sort of research laboratories, also getting into clinical hospital laboratories through our efforts. And they host every year a North American Freezer Challenge, which you can bring to the attention of your academic medical centers. And the part of their goal is to have everybody change their -80s, start thinking it's -70, because there's actually no literature that -80 is any better for the contents of the freezer than -70, and obviously there's a lot of energy savings if you move your freezers to -70. The other major group that you should look into is called My Green Labs. It's a nonprofit out of California headed up by Allison Paradise, and she launched in the past year the ACT label, ACT label, which is basically an Energy Star type of label, but it goes way beyond Energy Star for appliances that are used in laboratories, clinical research, any type of laboratory that buys appliances. And so it's an Energy Star type of label, but also getting into products that are used in the laboratories as well. And it's a very thorough, third-party verified label called the ACT label that you can try to get support for through your purchasing department. It is a very difficult problem in research laboratories that the decentralized, and so sort of no ownership and no sense of commitment from individuals in terms of difficulty for having top-down implementation of energy-saving measures or purchasing guidelines. So that is a big problem, but these are some of the solutions that people are working on.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have to cut it off there. Let's give a round of applause to the panel. So I would like to thank all of you who have joined us for this fascinating series of discussions and presentations that are pointing the way to the challenges ahead of us. I hope that what you've heard here will give you information that you need to make change happen. And now we will move toward some of the steps that we're going to take that will address the challenges before us. For those of you who are not making the visits to Congress this afternoon, when we return, we're going to be sitting by states. And so those who aren't participating, essentially the conference ends now. Please join us for a coffee break, and the rest of us will return at 10:45 as promptly as possible. Thanks.